So a former Valve employee thinks the Epic Games Store is saving PC gaming. You heard me right. Let's get into it.
Skip it up and that up.
So when it comes to the Epic Games Store, a lot of people have, well, I'll put it nicely, mixed reactions. Between them getting exclusivity deals for a lot of big titles coming out, whether they be timed exclusives or straight up exclusivity deals, to the disaster that surrounded Metro Exodus, where it was on Steam, you could pre-order it on Steam, then at the 11th hour, they pulled it from Steam, and it was a timed exclusive for a year on the Epic Games Store, because at the last minute, Koch Media and Deep Silver were like, hey, we could get a better revenue share, that 88% revenue share, that cash money. And people were pretty pissed. Still sold well on the Epic Games Store, but it made a lot of gamers very unhappy with Epic, and it did kind of tarnish their name. Then there's the whole thing about how Epic Games Store has like spyware in it, which just recently Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney came out and said, yeah, that's not true. I tend to believe him, but whatever. With all these rumors and all the negativity surrounding the Epic Games Store, a lot of people are looking at it that it's hurting PC gaming. But a former Valve employee, Richard Gildrich, thinks the exact opposite. Now, when Richard was at Valve, he worked on Left 4 Dead 2, Portal 2, and Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and his gamography goes on from there. He actually worked on Anthem, Battlefield 5, Overwatch, Halo Wars Definitive Edition. The list goes on and on. I'll have a link below in the description if you want to see other games that he has worked on. He's credible is what I'm trying to say. Whatever reasons he left Valve and is a former Valve employee, who knows, but it's not like this guy hasn't worked since he left Valve. He's still a credible person in the gaming industry is my point. Well, beyond Richard's track record, on Twitter recently, Tim Sweeney came out to defend the Epic Games Store and Epic Games against the Epic Games Store being spyware. And Richard replied, and it kind of got into Richard defending the Epic Games Store and saying that they're saving the gaming industry and that Valve's Steam service was actually hurting it. It's a very interesting back and forth, and I don't want to just read you what was in comicbook.com. I'll read you some of the back and forth, and then we'll discuss it. Tim Sweeney writes, I support everyone's right to complain about tech industry stuff. Epic Store with exclusive games and a Spartan feature set is a fine target for ire, but please help separate facts and opinions from the lies about spyware and foreign control. And Richard replies back with, hang in there, Epic, you're doing great things for the video game industry. Now, a Twitter user replies back with, who shall remain private, if you'd qualify taking away a long-awaited game, 7 years to be precise, and putting it on a platform for 6 months that is riddled with security issues and potential spyware. By the way, they're talking about how Borderlands 3 is going to be a Epic Game Store exclusive for 6 months. It's another timed exclusive that's making a lot of people angry. I suppose that's good. Epic has a ways to go and they'll do well soon, but I and many can't support them. Now, what Richard responds back here with is pretty interesting. He kind of says, well, Steam, if you think that the Epic Game Store is spyware, Steam is doing the same thing. This is why I wanted to read more than just than what was in comicbook.com about Richard. This is what he says. It's not potential spyware that's insane. Anybody with programming common knowledge and some knowledge can see this. I worked for Valve, and believe me, they gather huge amounts of data about virtually everything you do with the Steam client. Yet no one calls Steam spyware. He continues, if it wasn't for Epic, the entire industry would still be crunching away to support Valve's 30% revenue share. Most of these profits went to a tiny handful of people who could care less about the industry or working conditions. Thank the gaming gods for Epic. Now, there's some tweets here that just aren't really relevant to the story here, but another Twitter user who shall remain anonymous writes, the saddest part is I despise Andrew Wilson, who popularized loot boxes, but at least as pathetic as Wilson is, EA gave the illusion of getting something. All Epic has done is cannibalized every game in your roster, left Save the World for Dead, talking about the Save the World mode in Fortnite. Now you're killing PC gaming. And what Richard replies back with here, this is the part that was in the comicbook.com article, was interesting. This is what he says. Steam was killing PC gaming. It was a 30% tax on an entire industry. It was unsustainable. You have no idea how profitable Steam was for Valve. It was a virtual printing press. It distorted the entire company. Epic is fixing this for all gamers. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, Richard's just a disgruntled ex-Valve employee. And that's why I looked up his work history, because obviously he just worked on Anthem. He just worked on Battlefield 5. He worked on Overwatch, a whole bunch of other games. It's not if this guy left on bad terms with Valve, more than likely he wouldn't still have a job, like be working consistently in the industry. So even if he left on, maybe there was a disagreement he had with Lord Gaben or whoever, and he walked out the door, he still had his credibility, is my point. Because if he didn't and he was just a bad employee, he wouldn't be working now. 99.9% chance he wouldn't be working. But as much as I've had my grievances with the Epic Games Store, he has a point. Okay, how long have we, if you're a PC gamer out there, you know, how long have we been complaining about issues with Valve, like their customer service? It's gotten slightly better, but it's still And, you know, I've heard game developers complaining about the revenue share well before the Epic Games Store was even a blip on the radar. So these are things that have been, and Valve, because they've basically been a digital distribution monopoly. I mean, you had other, like the Origins and Uplay. Uplay. Yeah, that's a joke. You had other digital distribution software out there, but it just wasn't on the radar. Like Valve and Steam, it was like the Windows of gaming on a computer, which is kind of ironic because Windows, you're gaming on Windows, but you get my point. Like if you gamed on PC, it was Steam 99.9% of the way. Okay. And now they finally have some viable competition, and it's kind of like they just don't seem, they know how to handle it. And yeah, okay, they change their revenue share when you hit different tiers. It goes to 75% goes to devs, and Valve only gets 25. Then if it goes to 50 million, Valve gets 20% and developers keep 80%, but it's still 88% across the board if you have a game that's distributed on the Epic Games Store. So that is very enticing to developers, especially very enticing, not just to AAA developers, to indie developers who know they will never hit those different tiers. It just won't happen. They will only get 70% of the revenue share, even if they are in a successful independent game. So Valve, no pun intended, needs to step their game up. And it's really simple what they need to do. Maybe because greed makes people not think straight and they don't want to hit that button and actually go to the 88% and match the revenue share that Epic is giving developers. But if they do that, man, the Epic Games Store will be a wrap. I know there's other issues that developers have with Valve and Steam beyond the revenue share, but if they just start with the revenue share and make it the same as the Epic Games Store, 99% of these exclusivity deals will go both with AAA games and indie games. Valve, just do it. Just drop the hammer and I'm not saying the Epic Games Store will go away and not still be a viable competitor in other aspects, but it'll still be much tougher for them to compete and get all these exclusivity deals and timed exclusivity deals. I'm telling you, whether you like what I'm saying or not, it's just a fact. So, and I think it's only a matter of time until Valve does that. I'm telling you, eventually you're going to see me do a news video where Valve says, okay, we caved 88% across the board for revenue share for all developers, whether AAA or indie, and no matter what kind of revenue the game brings in, we're just going to give them 88%. But until that happens, we see the Epic Games Store is giving Steam a run for their money more than any other digital distribution service has. So hopefully this is a wake-up call to Valve, but we'll have to wait and see. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one. Hey everybody, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the subscribe button. Also click the bell next to it to be notified of all of my uploads. And if you want to come check out my live streams, I have a second YouTube channel called RTU Streams where I'll be streaming there quite a bit starting in April. I'll have a link to that below in the description as well. Thank you for the continued support, and I'll see all of you in the next video.